Imagine depositing over $150,000 in a bank, locking the certificates in a safety deposit box, and leaving the country. Years later, when you try to claim your money, the bank tells you the account is empty and that you already withdrew it over a decade ago. The depositor points to the original physical certificates still in their possession. The bank points to its internal computer database, showing the funds are gone. To break a deadlock like this in civil litigation, the court relies on a standard called the preponderance of evidence. It means one side's narrative must be more than 50% likely to be true compared to the other. The plaintiff must place enough weight on their side of the scale to prove the debt exists before the bank is even required to mount a defense. In a defining ruling, the Supreme Court of the Philippines resolved this specific dispute by enforcing a strict hierarchy of evidence. They established that a bank's internal computer-generated ledgers cannot automatically override the physical reality of financial instruments. This evidentiary standard forces accountability. It prevents financial institutions from relying on opaque internal systems to unilaterally erase their obligations to depositors. The final arbiter for this dispute is the Supreme Court of the Philippines. The case pits the depositors, Remedios and Angelita Antonino, against BDO Universal Bank, one of the country's largest financial institutions. The law places a unique burden on institutions like BDO. While a typical person must observe the standard diligence of a good father of a family, a bank is held to the highest degree of diligence. Because banks hold the public's money, their business relies entirely on fiduciary trust. Therefore, an operational failure by a bank is treated as a legally punishable breach of that trust. The Antoninos opened their case by presenting 4 original time deposit certificates. As we can see in this table from the court records, these 4 certificates represent a combined principal of exactly $100,000.70. The depositors testified that they had locked these original certificates inside a safety deposit box at a different bank, leaving them there untouched for years. The strength of these physical certificates comes from the bank's own terms and conditions. Look at paragraph 9, found on the back of the certificates. It explicitly states that the certificate shall be surrendered to the bank upon redemption of the account. The logic here is absolute. If the bank's own rules mandate that the physical document must be handed over to get the money, then the fact that the depositor still possesses the original document strongly indicates no payout ever occurred. By producing these certificates, the Antoninos established what the law calls a prima facie case. They provided sufficient initial evidence to win, assuming the bank cannot produce stronger counter-evidence. The weight of those physical documents forces the evidentiary scale downward. The burden of proof now shifts completely onto BDO. The bank must explain exactly how and when the money left their vault if the original certificates are still sitting in a safety deposit box. BDO countered with these computer-printed history logs. By tracking the dates in the left column, BDO argued that the funds were continuously rolled over upon maturity, eventually culminating in a complete withdrawal of the proceeds on May 28, 2001. To support this digital timeline, the bank presented a single piece of physical evidence, a carbon copy of a demand draft allegedly bearing the signature of Angelita Antonino from that day in May. But this defense exposes a massive operational failure. If Angelita showed up to withdraw the money without the original certificates, BDO's strict procedures required her to execute a formal affidavit of loss before any redemption could be processed. The bank never produced this affidavit. When pressed for these supporting documents, BDO cited the passage of 14 years. As shown in their own correspondence, they admitted they could not produce them because the retention period for the accounts had lapsed. Without physical corroboration like the affidavit of loss, the computer printouts are merely internal, self-serving logs. They carry zero legal weight against the physical certificates and cannot tip the evidentiary scale back in the bank's favor. The entire foundation of BDO's defense rests on the claim that Angelita Antonino walked into a branch in the Philippines and signed that demand draft on May 28, 2001. The depositors dismantled that claim using records from the Bureau of Immigration. This BOI certification provided hard proof. Angelita departed the Philippines in November 2000 and returned in June 2003. As a public record under Section 23, Rule 132, it carries a presumption of regularity, standing as prima facie evidence she was in the United States. To overcome this presumption, the opposing party must present clear and convincing evidence to the contrary. A carbon copy signature on a demand draft falls completely short of this standard. In the hierarchy of evidence, verified public documents heavily outrank uncorroborated corporate database entries. The physical impossibility of the bank's timeline destroyed their defense. While the depositors successfully proved the bank owed them the $100,000, they actually lost a separate claim regarding their very first investment of $50,000. As shown in the top row of this evidentiary table, the Antoninos could not produce the original certificate of time deposit for this specific placement. They could only present an official receipt for the $50,000. The court drew a strict line between these two documents. Looking at these legal definitions, a receipt and a certificate of deposit are not interchangeable. An official receipt is a written acknowledgement that a payment was made. It only proves an action occurred in the past, that the depositors handed money to the bank. A certificate of deposit, however, is a written promise by the bank to pay that money back to the depositor. That piece of paper is the required proof of a continuing legal obligation. The court denied the $50,000 claim because the evidentiary hierarchy is completely neutral. The bank cannot substitute internal databases for physical proof, and depositors cannot substitute a payment receipt for a promissory certificate. Strict compliance with evidentiary rules applies equally to both sides. BDO's handling of the account revealed a cascade of compounding failures. They accepted a carbon copy signature, bypassed their own requirement for an affidavit of loss, and failed to verify the physical identity of the person withdrawing massive sums of foreign currency. These missing steps amount to a direct violation of the highest degree of diligence required of banking institutions. In the final judgment, the Supreme Court ordered the bank to return the $100,000 plus interest. Items 2 and 3 add 300,000 pesos in exemplary damages and 100,000 in moral damages to compensate the depositors' extreme anxiety. The exemplary damages act as a specific, targeted penalty. They are imposed to serve as a public warning to the entire banking sector, enforcing the rule that they must maintain absolute meticulousness in their operations. A universal bank's digital convenience and automated ledgers carry zero legal weight if the institution abandons the physical rigor required by its fiduciary duty. When a dispute hits the courtroom, the preponderance of evidence will always favor verifiable reality over corporate database assumptions.